We are not angels. There would be no problem if the elderly remembered that they were once young, and if the young remembered that they will also grow old. The mother was expecting guests. Pétaniane, the co-tenant, was surprised to see the big commotion in the kitchen. The mother was baking strudel, not from store-bought pastry, but she made the dough herself, stretched it, and pitted the cherries. Pétaniane was making a creamy pumpkin stew, and licked the spoon. I don't know what on earth they put in this sour cream, it's not good. But I never would have thought, Mrs. Andras, that you could even bake. And how did you get home from the office so early? No class. I didn't want to say, but I can't keep it in. My son and his wife are coming over tonight. Imagine, my daughter-in-law is pregnant. Well, thank God, exclaimed Pétaniane. See, I told you the baths would do her good. I was already married for 5 years, my poor husband said he'd kick me out if I didn't give him a child. Then one of my neighbors, a very decent woman, God bless her soul, advised me to go to the salt baths. The doctor said it wasn't necessary, but what do doctors know? We women understand these things better. And didn't my sons come one after the other? Try this, dear Mrs. Andras, is this sour cream salty or what? Looking at you, you could still be nursing a child, not a grandchild. The mother laughed but did not protest. She took the cut glass set from the shelf, placed coffee cups on the table, then suddenly ran down to the store to buy strawberries and a large bouquet of roses. She glanced at herself in the window of the corner clothing store, seeing only her slim figure and the bouquet of roses. I'm going to have a grandchild, she said softly, and decided she would give the baby the crocheted doll that sat in the corner of the couch. And what if it's a boy? He can still play with a doll. The children promised to arrive by 6, but they only came after 8:45. Yuri immediately sprawled out on the linen-covered armchair, put his feet on a chair, and fanned himself with the newspaper. What heat, Mama, and I'm so tired. Well, don't be tired now. What will you do if the little one cries all night and you have to go to work the next day? Said the mother cheerfully as she went to the sideboard for the coffee maker. When she turned back, she saw her daughter-in-law still standing by the window. What is it, Vera, aren't you tired? Sit down, dear, you really need to take care of yourself. The young woman shrugged, sat on the chair by the window, and stared out at the neighbor's window with geraniums. The mother looked at her in surprise. Is something wrong? The young woman bit her lip and fiddled with her handbag. Oh, Mama, what could be wrong? We'll figure it out somehow. What? You're still asking? The mother's hand slipped, and the coffee grinder fell to the carpet but fortunately did not open. The two young people didn't make a move to help pick it up. The mother bent down, and for the first time in her life, she felt a pain in her back. Her good mood from the afternoon vanished in an instant. What's wrong with them? But by the time she returned from the kitchen with the plate of pastries, the young couple was sitting at the table, laughing. Vera apologized, saying she had a bit of a stressful day at work. But this strudel, only Mama could bake something like this. And they praised the strudel, raving as if it were the best cherry in the world, sprinkled with the best powdered sugar. They praised it as if they didn't want to talk about anything else all evening. Oh, come on, said the mother, both pleased and modest. Aunt Rosie bakes you such things, or even better ones. Aunt Rosie, said Vera sharply. Aunt Rosie is quite something too. She quit. The mother put down her coffee cup. Both Yuri and Vera stared at her as if accusing her of some terrible crime. Why did she quit? Good question. Why? Because everything is a mess because of this. She said she wouldn't stay to wash diapers for me. She'd have to be crazy. They pay 5 forints an hour for a cleaning lady, and she gets 400 a month from me. But dear Vera, if she cleaned in a factory, she'd barely earn more in 8 hours, and with you, she's there for only 4 or 5 hours. Tell her that, not me. I believe it without being told. Well, find someone else. Sure, find someone else. Do you know how hard it is to find a cleaning lady? At one of Yuri's colleagues' places, they hired an old woman to watch the kid. One evening they come home, and the child is playing with a knife. They call the woman. How did the knife get into the playpen? She knows nothing. The next day, they come home, and the child has a glass shard in his hand. The woman knows nothing about that either. They start looking into who she was before. Turns out she was quite a character. They should have checked beforehand, said the mother, looking at her son. Yuri stared motionlessly at his cup, as if two strangers were fighting in front of him, and he would see who remained standing. Who can get information beforehand? And what's it worth? It's no solution to leave the child with a stranger at all. A nursery. That was the plan, said the mother, offering strawberries. I'm talking as if I need to defend myself. How could I help them? Sure, there's the nursery too, replied Vera, looking at Yuri. Mama knows what kind of care they provide in nurseries. It's all on a schedule, feeding takes a minute, bathing 3 minutes, and of course, the water isn't warm enough. Come on, Vera. You don't believe me? Well, I'm not putting the child in daycare. No way. I don't want my child bringing home measles. Look at the neighbor's kid, constantly running a fever. Since they had him, the mother has been home all the time. But even if nothing's wrong, you have to pick the child up from daycare by 5. How can I get home by 5? Sometimes I stay until 8, and I'm in charge of cultural activities. My dear, I raised 4 children, said the mother, and I did it as a widow, sewing to support us, keeping them clean, getting them educated. I know what life is, and what it means to struggle for your child. When my husband stayed behind in Voronezh, Yuri was 12, and it was wartime. So don't be so upset, I didn't expect my first child under such circumstances. Well, I shouldn't have said anything, and a tear appeared in Vera's eye. You're right, Mama, I have it easy. I go to the office in the morning, work on blueprints all day until my eyes hurt, and it's a responsible job, engineering work. Meanwhile, I'm constantly nauseous, anemic, and getting liver injections, but you're right, Mama, we'll figure it out. If only my mother were alive. Oh, you silly girl, I didn't mean to hurt you. Vera, dear, how could I hurt you? I'm so happy I'm going to have a grandchild, my first grandchild. The mother went over to the crying woman, wiped her eyes and nose with her own handkerchief, and would have liked to sit next to her and feed her strawberries. And there's no space in the factory daycare, Vera sniffled, but she was already eating the fruit. I told my supervisor today that I'm having a baby, and he nearly fell off his chair. He was so worried about finding a replacement, asking why I had to give birth in November, suggesting I delay it to January to solve the staffing issue. And he made it clear that after 3 months of maternity leave, my leave wouldn't be extended, I couldn't stay home unpaid, and if I didn't plan to come back, I should just say so. Mama, did I go to university for everything to fall apart? I'm 24, we could have waited. The mother didn't reply, what could she say? But when they left around 11, she couldn't go to bed. She just sat at the table, hands in her lap, looking around the room at each piece of furniture, the little bookshelf, the drawer cabinet, the radio, the crocheted cover on the small table. An oppressive, bad feeling overtook her, a fear of something, as if she had to say goodbye to beloved people and things. She earned 954 a month, managed well, had clothes, and a theater subscription. On Sundays, she would visit one child or the other. It was so nice. And if she left her job, she'd call Yuri tomorrow. In the morning, she didn't call from the office, but from the neighbor's tobacconist at 7 o'clock. Yuri sounded very cheerful and not surprised at all. The mother was stunned. She had only said they could meet after work, maybe find a solution, maybe she could help, and Yuri had already interrupted her. It turned out they had discussed everything with Vera in detail. The mother would quit her job on the 1st of the month, of course, now the 1st, why work through the hot summer when there's the nice garden apartment, she could rest and there's so much fruit to pick and preserve. They didn't care much for jam, but with a baby. Yes, and it made no sense for the mother to live separately, after all, it was just a shared apartment. Her own children were as dear to her as Petaniane, weren't they? 2 rooms and a hall were more than enough for them and the child, and the mother could arrange the 3rd room as she wished. Yuri would talk to an architect friend today, and they would wall off the living room door and cut a door from the hall, so the mother's room would have a completely separate entrance. And Aunt Rosie would be happy to stay under these conditions, but she wouldn't need to come every day, twice a week would suffice to do the laundry and help with the heavier work. And Vera would also help with the household, and of course, Yuri himself would readily bring up coal from the basement, and even go to the grocery store. The mother had worked enough in her life, she deserved a bit of ease. The mother put down the receiver, sighed deeply, and looked around the tobacconist as if she didn't belong there. Why was she there? Only outside did she remember she had to pay 60 fillers for the call, so she went back. The tobacconist asked sympathetically, is something wrong? No, no, not at all, she said, trying to smile. At the office, everyone was dismayed. She was only a few years short of retirement. And was it a good idea to give up her own apartment? Did she know how much even a rental room would cost if she wanted to move out again? The staff immediately split into two camps. The young women said she was right to help with the child, they could understand her daughter-in-law, it's overwhelming to juggle work and childcare, running errands, and companies have no sympathy. Recently, Mrs. Korkus was put on the shame board for being 10 minutes late. Murai colleagues should see how that poor mother rushes in the morning, waking her sleepy child, hurriedly feeding him, the child crying, throwing up, needing a change again. Murai colleague adjusted his glasses, red with anger, enough about Mrs. Korkus, she wasn't late because of the child, she said herself she was making cherry jam. Then the women again, yes, she got up at 4 in the morning to sort and pit cherries. What should she do if the gas was slow to heat? Sit on it. And for whom was she making the jam if not for her children? Buy canned goods, shouted Murai, we eat canned goods too. Well, go ahead, I make my own preserves. Korksnay's voice shrieked back. Backward woman, raged old Murai with the elbow patches, making the two skinny typists giggle. And you're right, Mrs. Andras, to help the young ones, do help, but for God's sake, don't move in with them, because there's peace between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law only as long as they don't live together. This was the main topic in the office for 3 weeks. And by the 15th, Mrs. Andras handed over her desk to the bald Ormai. The girls asked for her calendar. Murai inherited her metal ruler. She had to say goodbye to everyone and return her ID card. She had to inform the technical drawing course that she wouldn't be taking the exam. Mrs. Korkus burst into tears. It's strange, you complain about your colleagues so much, and yet they grow dear to your heart. The apartment was even more painful. According to Gyuri, only the sofa and the shelf needed to be kept, along with the radio. What's the point of all that junk? There wasn't enough space. Some things would temporarily stay in the mother's room. The old-fashioned table didn't match the modern furniture. And not to worry, he would handle the entire move. Vera would sort through the kitchenware, keeping what was necessary, and the rest could be sold or distributed among the siblings. All right, said the mother, it makes no difference to me, my dear. Then she woke up in her new home for the first time. The radio blared in the next room. Yuri impatiently asked if there was a clean shirt. The mother, startled, never imagined that Vera and Yuri would speak so irritably with each other. Her room smelled of mothballs because the large wardrobe, filled with winter clothes, was there. How pleasant the scent of her drawer chest, filled with walnut leaves and lavender, used to be. But the first week was indeed a honeymoon. Yuri and Vera were full of attentiveness and enthusiasm. Everything was wonderful, everything tasted good, the mother cooked wonderfully, the mother ironed wonderfully, they had to take the mother to the movies, they had to bring the mother a bar of chocolate, and they had to grant the mother a monthly pocket money of 100 forints, although she wouldn't have much to spend it on. The first month flew by. Late at night, the mother was leaning on the table, scribbling away. What had she spent the missing 2 forints on? Did she buy sweet paprika? Or caraway seeds? No, that was yesterday. She had never kept a household book, there was something tortuous and humiliating about it. She took out her little purse again and counted the money. Along with the purse, she pulled out her handkerchief, and with the handkerchief, a folded cardboard piece. The theater subscription. She had already missed 2 performances. Yuri called home to say he'd be late, there was a meeting, and they wouldn't need dinner until around 9:30. Surely, the mother didn't mind, she had no special plans, right? No, of course not, she didn't mind, she had no plans. She now tossed the expired subscription aside. No, she certainly wouldn't renew it in the fall. The mother was already at the milk shop by 6 o'clock. But no matter how hard she tried, she was only 8th or 10th in line. In front of her stood other grandmothers with milk bottles, red enamel pots, and shopping baskets, anxiously glancing at the fast-moving clock and silently enduring the grumbling of the young people arriving after them. Come after 8, we are workers. The mother boiled the milk, placed fresh rolls and blue-edged cups on the tray. The narrow blue stripe always reminded her of the drawing course, the compasses, rulers, the pale purple carbon paper, complex constructions. How well she had progressed, how much her work was appreciated, how many interesting things she learned. Mama, please, I really wouldn't want to bother you, but I have a very big favor to ask. The mother snapped out of her daydreams, putting butter, radishes, and salt on the tray. Vera had come into the kitchen, wearing her dressing gown. Yes, dear. But really, I'm so ashamed. I'd like to wear the light blue blouse. I forgot to sew on the collar. My white blouse doesn't fit anymore, and I have a class meeting at 7:30. All right, just give it here. The next morning. You don't mind, dear mama, but Yuri has no darn socks, and you have more time. And the mother darned the sock, hemmed the skirt, picked up the scattered clothes, the robe thrown in the bathroom, the gaping shoes without shoe trees. She ran out to the balcony to shake the dust cloth, and the janitor's wife shouted at the top of her lungs, "It's past 10 o'clock, only workers can dust now." The mother was startled, then said nothing, closing the door. At the beginning of November, on a rainy, foggy morning, Vera suddenly fell ill. Yuri became useless from excitement. He just ran up and down. Vera and the mother packed the baby things, the mother called for a taxi, the mother handed Yuri his coat in the hallway, as he would have run out without a coat, without a hat. An hour later, Yuri returned, pacing the room, sighing, drumming his fingers on the windowpane, and wanting to call the hospital every 2 minutes. "Go to bed," said the mother, "you heard, nothing will happen before noon." "Easy for you to say, Mama," said Yuri, scratching his palm with his nails like he did in school when he didn't know the answer. "I labored with you for 2 days, the mother replied quietly. "That's how it is with the first child." The man blushed. His mother would never have said this at any other time, and he had never thought about it before. People get used to living and don't really think about their own birth. "Don't be mad at me, Mama." "Oh, what nonsense you're talking. Why would I be mad at you?" The little girl was born only in the late afternoon. They named her Vera. She was 51 centimeters long, 3 kilos and 30 decagrams, cried loudly, and nursed heartily. In a word, she was wonderful. Like all newborns. The mother met little Vera a week later when they came home from the hospital. She looked at her, couldn't get enough of seeing her. The way she squinted at the light, wrinkled her forehead, kicked with her legs, made the grandmother's heart leap with joy. She wanted to hold her, hug her, kiss her, never put her down. The crib and the changing table were delivered from the department store. Yuri paced up and down, measuring the space with his hand span, shaking his head. It wouldn't fit here, it wouldn't fit there. It wouldn't fit anywhere. There was a draft over there. The best heated room was the mother's room, after all. The mother said nothing, but the next morning she cleaned the small room next to the kitchen, which had been used as a pantry. With the help of the janitor's wife, she moved out the sofa and the radio, and little Vera got the big room. The separate entrance had come to nothing. Yuri had spoken to an architect friend at the beginning of autumn, but so many permits were needed that it had been abandoned. See, it was good they didn't rush the construction. And the world changed strangely. Before, there had been Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, production meetings, office hours, end of workday, and summer vacations. There had been day and night. Now you got up when the grandchild whimpered, now the baby scale showed the passage of time, and the doctor allowed more and more varied foods, potatoes, spinach, grated apple. The kitchen was always stuffy and damp from the drying diapers, something was always cooking on the stove from morning till night. Dinner for Yuri and Vera, who came home at such uncertain, late times, or semolina pudding or tea for little Vera. And at least 10 times a day, the mother ran down the stairs to the market, stood in line for ice, because Vera's food had to be kept on ice, or she heard that lemons had arrived at the greengrocer. And Rest was sitting in the armchair, holding the little blonde-haired one in her lap, quickly feeding the spoonfuls of puree to the gaping mouth. It was a hot summer day. Little Vera was sleeping on the balcony, and the mother was ironing in the kitchen. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Petani stood at the door, wearing a nice linen suit, holding a large bouquet of flowers. "Good day, neighbor, don't you recognize me? Or don't you want to let me in?" "Oh, I'm opening the door, dear, I'm so glad to see you. I had to come. You couldn't be dragged away with 6 oxen." They kissed each other on the cheeks in the hallway. "It's nice here," said Mrs. Petani. "Which is your room?" "Let's go straight to the balcony," the mother evaded the question. She put the flowers in a vase, all the while trying to hide her overwashed hands behind her back. "Come on, I'll show you little Vera. If I'm not disturbing you," says Mrs. Petani. But the mother is accommodating, saying she isn't disturbed at all. She was just about to wash up and get dressed, as she had had enough work for the day. At most, she might bring some mending out to the balcony, as conversation is better while doing needlework. Mrs. Petani laughs. They had lived in the same apartment for 9 years, and she always knew that the mother didn't really like sewing. But she catches herself, not saying aloud what she is thinking. And she just watches her former neighbor, who has aged 5 years in 1 year. Did you make a good trade, Mrs. Andras? Look how sweetly she's sleeping. I don't want to wake her. Her eyes are the most beautiful part of her. They're as wheat blue as my Yuri's. I'm asking, isn't this much more tiring for you? It's a joy, not work. Look at her little shirt. It's as light as a feather. My youngest son, who is now a soldier, was an autumn child, like this little girl. It was cold, nasty weather when he was born. 4 diapers and a blanket were all the neighbors could gather, that was everything. Oh, how I would have loved for him to have just a little jacket, as nice and knitted as the ones Vera has a dozen of. I swaddle and dress my treasure as if I were nursing all 4 of my children again. So, are you happy? My son and daughter-in-law are doing very important work, nothing compared to what I did in the office. For now, this is good. Just let them get ahead. By the time little Vera grows up. By then, asks Mrs. Petani. I don't even know what I wanted to say, replies the mother, I really don't know. I want my grandchild to go to a nursery, says Mrs. Petani, standing up. So, neighbor, when are you coming to the movies? As soon as I get a chance, I'll go. I'll believe it when I see it. You always just promise. What time does your daughter-in-law come home? Well, as she can. Mrs. Petani glances quickly through the 3 interconnected rooms. The farthest one, with a large mahogany desk and bookcase, cannot be the mother's room. The middle one, from which the large balcony opens, is a modern living room, with none of the mother's furniture. The third one has a playpen, crib, and changing table. Well, indeed. Thank you for the flowers, Mrs. Petani. Birthday flowers, happy birthday. The blood drains from the mother's face. What day is it? Today she is 50. Thank you. Thank you very much. I imagine you got a nice gift from your children. Why? Yes, a beautiful dress material. I've already taken it to the tailor, she replies, turning red like a poppy. Mrs. Petani leaves, the mother stands, looking at the roses and carnations. 50 years old. Yuri and Vera didn't forget her birthday either. At 9 in the evening, they went to the movies. They would tell the mother they were at a meeting, not wanting to hurt her feelings. But they had actually met much earlier, at 5:30, when the department stores were still open. Arm in arm, they walked through the textile department, picking through the printed cottons and pure silks. 300 forints for enough silk for a dress. And the mother already has a summer dress. In the end, they bought a scarf and a bar of chocolate. The mother will be happy with this too, Yuri said. There's a lot of expenses now, they can't throw money around. And after all, they are supporting the mother now. 1954.